Yay.
So, welcome to the panel, and I have to read the title because it's a little long. Cable, TV, film, and broadband, new content, new networks, streams, platforms, and devices. So, I'll let everybody introduce themselves in a second, but when we got together as a group, we kind of picked it apart into 3 topics, and the first one really is talking about TV everywhere. What does that mean? It's been with us for a while, but what will it feel like when it gets there? How, as consumers, are we going to get to our content in the future? And are we actually going to pay for it? And how are we going to pay for that in the model that is coming forward? So those are the 3 main topics. We have a varied panel, so I'll let Adam start, just as he drinks his water.
Absolutely. I'm the first bald guy on the panel. I'll get more down the dead. So you can tell us apart when we start talking. I work at Tennis Channel. I'm the head of digital media, and we launched a hybrid TV everywhere and OTT subscription service. Coming up on this May would be 2 years, or coming up at Roland Garros would be 2 years, and looking forward to talking about it.
Great. Next to him is Joe.
Good evening. My name is Joe Friend. We have our names here if you want to know that. I'm responsible for the ad technology on cable, TV, film, and broadband, new content, networks, streams, platforms, and devices. I work for Fox Networks Group. We're responsible for the 6 broadcast and TV nets: Fox Broadcast Company, FX Networks, Fox Sports, Big Ten, Deportes, Nat Geo, Channel and Wild, and we're responsible for monetization on the digital arenas that includes both IP, linear IP VOD, set-top box VOD, and on up to 12 different endpoints, as well as the MVPD distribution partners and Hulu.
Thank you. Next to him is Scott number 1.
Scott number 1. My name is Scott Brown. I'm with Nielsen, responsible for the engineering and development of solutions for many of the things that you just spoke of, particularly for emerging platforms. But I think most of you know that our business is one that is a global information company. We're sort of split into 2 distinct disciplines of watch and buy. But beneath that, we have obviously a TV ratings business that has been in operation for about 60 years. So we measure the linear TV, we measure digital television, radio, do an awful lot of work with the advertising community, reach and effectiveness metrics, et cetera. So Nielsen hopefully is the company that tries to make sense of all of this emerging technology and the rapid changes that are impacting our industry every day.
Thanks, Scott. And Amit.
Sure. Hey guys, my name is Amit Ziv. I head up business development for Epix. Epix JV between Viacom, Lionsgate, MGM. We're a premium subscription TV network. In my role, I spearhead our distribution deals with MVPDs and OTT distributors, and also work very closely in doing our TV Everywhere partnerships with all the various device platforms. Great time in the history of the network. Our subscriber growth has been probably the best it's ever been. We've grown by over 50% in the last 12 months alone, working closely with our MVPDs. Have some great OTT partners with Sling, View, Hulu, Amazon, and we have our first 2 original series, scripted series, hitting the service in October. So a lot of good stuff going on.
Thanks, Amit. And Scott number 2.
Hi, I'm Scott Barton. I head up digital products and digital programming at Starz. In fact, actually, we just rolled out a new rebranded and redesigned app solution that combines our previous, really 3 TV Everywhere products into one simplified solution. And what we think that what makes us unique in the premium space, at least, is that is the single destination for all Starz subscribers. So whether you're a TV provider subscriber or you are a OTT subscriber, it's the one single destination where you can go and either consume content or buy and consume content from Starz. Hopefully we'll talk about that a little today.
We're going to start there. So if we think about TV Everywhere, it's a phrase that's been around for a while, but I think most would say we're on the path, but nowhere near fulfillment of the dream. So you mentioned the new Stars product. Can you give people the kind of view? There are three different pieces that HBO and others have kind of kept separate, but you've kind of bundled into one, which is TV Everywhere and OTT, et cetera. Can you give a sense for what that looks and feels
Yeah,
like?
sure. So I think, well, frankly, as an industry, I think we've probably made this harder than it needs to be. And Stars has been in the TV Everywhere business since 2012. And when we launched, we came out with really three products. We had Stars Play, Encore Play, and Movieplex Play. And what we've done just recently is we've consolidated them all into a single destination branded Stars. And what makes that unique is that one destination for both TV Everywhere authentication and a retail buy flow through retail partners like Apple and Google Play. So where maybe other folks in the industry, and I certainly understand how they got there, have separate destinations between TV Everywhere and an OTT solution, we feel that adds a layer of confusion for consumers and unnecessary complexity. So pretend you all didn't work in this industry, and it's difficult to find where to go to consume content. So if you heard about a show called Outlander, you would go to the Stars app, and you either log in with your Stars credentials and watch, or you buy Stars and watch. And that's the end game for us, and that's what we feel we've done with our app deployment last month.
Thanks, Scott. Adam, coming from a side where you have kind of live events attached to your channel, how do you see TV Everywhere looking like from an experiential perspective, and kind of what experiences do you foresee being fulfilled?
Good question. First of all, I like what Stars is doing because we're doing a similar thing, and I think we came at it from a slightly different point of view, and so sort of answering the question as it relates to TV Everywhere. I think TV Everywhere has a lot of challenges. It's not consistent. If you're a Comcast subscriber, you're going to have one kind of TV Everywhere offering. If you're a DirecTV subscriber, you're going to have another, and Fios and so on and so forth. Depending on what network you are or what programmer you are, you don't necessarily own the streaming rights to your content. And if you do, you have certain windowing restrictions on it and so on. And so I think the idea that somehow TV Everywhere was going to give you this simple solution to be able to access all this content you're already paying for on a whatever device you want, the parts of the business throw out all these challenges that seem to be very difficult to overcome. Simultaneously, you have things like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Instant Video and Apple and on and on and on that all create a very, very simple solution. And I think simplicity is at the core of this. The viewer, the fan, which in our case, we're catering to a very specific fan, wants to be able to get their content, wants to be able to watch it when they want to watch it, and they want to make it easy. They don't want to have to remember too many usernames and too many passwords to be able to access it. More specifically, as it relates to live sports, as a Dodger fan, I think it's a pretty tough situation to live in Los Angeles and not be able to watch the Dodgers unless I'm a Time Warner subscriber. And I'm not going to come out one way or the other whether you think Time Warner made the right approach with it or you think DirecTV, as an example, took the other side and said we're not going to pay what you're asking us to pay. The loser is the fan. So in the case of tennis, there's just so much of it that we couldn't fit it in on one TV Everywhere product. And so we came up with a solution that allowed us to deliver pretty much the entire sport to the fan by paying a subscription service and be able to access it. And that seems to be, at least as it relates to live sports, the direction it's going. And you see that with the NFL deal with Twitter.
Right.
In that case, they're not paying for it, but it's about getting directly to the fan and getting rid of as many barriers as possible.
So in that situation, you're broadcasting content that otherwise would never have got through the system, right?
Or, for instance, with the French Open, we would have covered one court and then
Right.
peeked in on 5 other courts and then gone back to whichever court we thought was the better court. Meanwhile, fans that got a little hint of those other courts that we were covering were like, well, wait, I'm a fan of Nadal. Why are you going back to the Federer match? And so on. And so this allows you to actually sort of stay with whichever one you want that a linear MVPD service can't really deliver upon, whereas a digital product can, because you literally can have 5 courts, 10 courts, 20 courts, 50 courts, whatever you want. And it allows you to fully cover the game.
All right. So Scott Brown, from a tracking perspective, you're obviously looking at all of this fragmentation. How do you see that kind of moving?
Well,
big
fragmentation is
question.
going to continue, I guess, is the easy answer. So, there's been a number of dimensions of fragmentation. We all know that programming has been fragmented for many, many years in terms of what consumers consume and how they consume it, and it's obviously been multiplied by the introduction of so many devices. See, I think I'm a thunderous voice. If you're telling me I'm soft-spoken. Thank you. But we've gone essentially from a business that measures slices of the viewing pie to measuring fragments. And anybody that tells you that measuring television is an easy business doesn't understand the business very well. It's very, very difficult. As we move to more and more platforms, we have to track the viewing on every one of those platforms. In some cases, we have to develop unique measurement solutions. In other cases, we can take existing measurement solutions. But I think most people in this audience, without going through ratings 101, you understand that we still stand by and we think our panel is incredibly valuable and important. It's an opt-in panel. We have a lot of depth of knowledge about viewing patterns and so forth. But that also helps us and informs a lot of our newer digital instruments that we're using. As you know, we've sort of transformed a lot of our business over to measuring digital ad ratings, digital content ratings, which are 2 of our newer products, which are census-based. The digital ad ratings in particular is pretty key to the publishing community. 23 of the top 25 are all using DAR and writing guarantees on that basis. So an interesting transformation for Nielsen, but to the question of over the top, we're engineering yet a different solution for that because it's a different set of challenges, and I think that's the future. We're just going to have to continually be creative and follow the viewing as it moves to different platforms.
Great. Adam highlighted some of the additional streams, but Joe, you talked about the endpoints that you're servicing. Do you think content is going to change away from the standard format of a TV show or some of the streaming to other forms of content that's going to go through the channels?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, there's always going to be an opportunity to monetize the existing content. We have to pay for it too, so that's always going to be there. There's always an appetite for it. That market share is not going to go away. But to Scott's point about what do we do to measure, how do we transact on things? We are looking to companies like Nielsen to provide us with MDAR and DAR solutions across our portfolio. We're partnered with them. We're partnered with ComScore, previously with RenTrack, who now got gobbled up. And we have our own transactional metrics that we utilize to make sure that we're able to provide the right value for that content. So as far as the end user experience with that content itself, you're going to find that we're going to be where they are. I grew up in the newspaper industry, and for years, I would say 15 or 20 years, ending in 2010, to be kind, was, hey, you have a company that dictates what their product is to the market. You get this lump of paper that gets your hands dirty. That's it. And they dictate to their advertisers and agencies, you're a must-buy. And that whole model has changed now, and now we are required to constantly innovate and be under the lightning, so to speak. We need to be where our users are. We need to be able to provide them with the content they expect, consuming it in the fashion that they do expect, and we sure as heck need to be able to monetize it and measure it and be able to apportion it out. In addition to the demo metrics, we need the capabilities to provide audience segmentation so that we can refine what that audience is, and package it up into something that's meaningful to our advertising and agency partners.
All right.
But can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because we don't have as many impressions as Fox would have or whatever would have in terms of the breadth of it. But this is one of the problems with TV Everywhere, for instance, is Fox will announce certain metrics as to how it performed, and ESPN will have a completely different set of metrics as to how it performed.
Yeah.
Right? And then an agency will say, no, we have a completely different view of the world as to how it performed. And so you literally have 4 or 5 different takes on the same thing.
Right.
Right? And you're sort of like, so which one is it? You know, what is actually people watching?
But I think it gets down to what the person across the table from you chooses to beat you up with.
Right.
You know, because if I'm an advertiser and agency, I'm going to come back with, require you to transact on viewability, because that's free impressions for me. They don't mind the waste; they still get there, but they're not going to pay for it. It's I think it really depends on what sings your song the best. I agree that the publishers could do better at getting together and figuring out what their point of view is on it and refining that. But until that happens, it's going to be dictated to us by the technology partners of the advertisers and agencies.
Well, that's why I like subscriptions, right?
Yeah.
Because that's
I like them too.
sort of avoid those
We
kind
like the
of
subscription
problems.
business.
Easy measurement model.
Yes, it is.
But just to circle back on, our content being pitched out, the different endpoints that content is available on, there's a different expectation of user experience. What is
Right.
the ads experience? What is the right ads mix? Connected devices, people treat that like TV. It's considered 100% viewable. We don't need to wire new stuff into it as a result. But people have a different relationship with that device than they do with their mobile devices. So, right now we're just trying out lots of different stuff. We acquired an engagement advertising company called TrueX, whose value statement is simply, we're going to reduce the ad load for the end user, and we're going to offer a refined audience back to the advertiser and agency. You have
Right.
a tacit, engaged audience member right there and right then. And they bought into the deal because the deal is less ads.
Right.
Can I just jump in on a few
Oh, yeah.
points? TV Everywhere, certainly TV Everywhere adoption hasn't been what everybody hoped it would be. I think it's gotten much better in the last couple of years. I would say some of the obvious issues that were driving that were probably primarily rights issues between programmers and MVPDs, especially for basic cable nets, ad-supported nets. Subscription business is a little easier business to deal with. We don't deal with the same concerns. So in-home versus out-of-home rights, linear versus VOD rights. For us, we will pitch out all 2,000 of our titles to the MVPD access points, and we feature them all on our access points. So one being a rights issue, second being a product issue. A lot of the apps and the platforms in their early days were not optimal. A lot of the platforms that folks built for in the early days didn't end up scaling. You could build for a certain generation of Samsung smart TVs, and they might phase out that operating system the next year. So they were all employing fragmented platform strategies, which I think has gotten better, and we sort of know who the players are today. Also on the product front, it's become a little more mature. Some really good dev shops that you can outsource that to, or you could do it in-house. Also improving the features. We launched offline viewing or temporary download, which I know you guys just did recently as well, which is a rights issue, but also a product issue. It helps with offline viewing and makes it a little more enticing for the consumer. And then authentication certainly is a clunky experience. I know there are a lot of vendors out there all hoping and looking for the holy grail, but it's something that I think will be solved. And then certainly measurement for the ad-supported folks out there.
So, tell us a little bit, because Epix has one of maybe the simpler business models to start with, right? You have a certain number of the studios that give you that premium film content to distribute out.
We license them.
Yeah.
They don't give them to us. We pay a lot of money for them. But yes, we have output deals with our with our owners, with our JV owners, Paramount, Lionsgate, and MGM. We control the pay one rights, subscription rights to the first run movies that come out of those studios. We're in the subscription business. Those are multi-platform rights.
So you've had to build out kind of a multi-platform model.
Yep.
But you're also moving into original content,
Yep.
as everybody seems to. So can you give us a little strategy as to why that comes into the mix for you?
Sure. I mean, it's about investing in the brand. It's about creating great content. It's about investing in our studio and production relationships. So there's not one reason specifically. I think having great first-run movies is an incredible foundation, but also an incredible subscriber acquisition and upgrade tool with our distributors. And series are only going to help build the brand of the service. It's about differentiation.
Okay.
Just chiming in there, certainly that is the STARS strategy as
Right.
well. So we've made a commitment to original series, and in fact, we just had the second season of Outlander kick off, and it's going incredibly well for us. I think to your point, the original series is how you establish that brand, and really what we're finding is, if you look at consumption patterns, people will come for the original. They come for the original, but then the original goes away and it dips. Maybe they're not a fan of the next original. And the movie content is really bridging that gap and that subscription value for us. That's where we're leveraging it. We're especially seeing that now that we've combined Stars Play and Encore Play together in a single destination. That user now has access to, call it 2,500 titles. They're not having to leave to go to a different app. Now they're staying and consuming in a more flat pattern that, at least now, I'm happy to say, is going upwards. So we're losing that kind of dip by the fan coming in and out. And I think that's how we're going to try to manage subscriber life and churn going forward.
So that is an interesting kind of ecosystem enhancing kind of play where you may show something on live TV and come through, and then suddenly somebody's picked it up on Netflix or Stars or some other app, and you've just kind of built the brand over time, and then come back and you'll get a higher audience on the next series, right? And so that, how, Scott, from a kind of measurement perspective, do you start to deal with those audience regeneration where you're getting some binge viewing coming through and people are starting to pick up in series, but it may be the third series before they've ever started watching some of these things?
We're agnostic to how people consume, so if they choose to binge view, we'll measure that. In the linear television space, I think all of you know that we use an audio watermark for content marking, and we use an audio signature for situations where we don't have the cooperation to fix a watermark. In the digital space, CMS tags, we use ID3 metadata as well. So content identifiers are really key for us, and we work with all of our content partners and clients and so forth to propagate those identifiers wherever, because once those identifiers are there, we've in effect developed meters that live in the digital world that can actually capture that usage impressions, if you will, and aggregate it. And to the point about OTT, I mean, OTT obviously cries out for a measurement solution. We've got a 4-phase solution that we're rolling out. We've rolled out 2 phases. So we now have a little bit of a grip on some of the viewing that's occurring to Netflix, and a lot of our clients are interested in what the impact of Netflix is. Of course, they alone have the data at the bargaining table, which is a unique proposition for Netflix. They didn't want to cooperate with our watermarking. We tried. So we had to come up with a more passive approach. And Netflix is one of those distributors that binge viewing is very common, as you probably all know from all the media reports and so forth. So we're going to have a better handle on OTT, and OTT is going to fit into our total audience product, which will give everybody sort of, the live linear, the DVR, the OTT, the TV everywhere, the total contribution that all of you need to conduct business.
The binge viewing is a huge issue, right? Because that's a tough programming strategy. You'll get someone to sit there and they'll binge through it and they'll be done in 17 hours.
One and done, right?
And then they'll disconnect their service. And then you gotta go talk to some studio and say, okay, I need another 22 series that has 150 episodes. And let's go older and older and older, because we're just going to reintroduce them. And so Netflix has clearly figured out how to use their data to push different kinds of content, allow you to continue to discover, because it appears their churn number is not as high, perhaps, as a Hulu churn number or others. And I think churn is probably the biggest issue that we're all going to face going forward on an OTT basis. Because if you believe the reports, you keep 20, 30% of your consumers to the next time they pay.
Right. Yeah, my daughter's just come back from college, and she's 2 days back and has watched 25 episodes of The Golden Girls. Apparently, she relates to the 70-year-old retired Miami-based.
The college aged her.
Let me just chime in a little bit on the binge programming strategy. It's certainly something we're experimenting with.
Right.
So a show like Outlander, we play off on a weekly basis, and we align our digital platforms with the linear airing. So that is if there's 12 episodes, that's a 12-week playoff, assuming there's no skips in between. Although we have done some experimenting with binge opportunities, we just released a limited series called The Girlfriend Experience, where we made all 13 episodes available all at once. Interestingly enough, that somewhat coincided with our new app launch. But it's been very interesting to watch that consumption pattern and watch those users kind of go in and auto-roll from an autoplay from one episode to the next. And for us, it'll just be finding the right balance with the right shows, because what we want to make sure we're doing is delivering on that consumer value and that consumer expectation, especially in the premium space, to be competitive. So I don't know that I'd come out and say it's a terrible idea. It's something that we're experimenting with.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll start with Joe, but open it up to the panel. What does the TV guide of the future look like? Is it a whole series of 30 different apps on your iPad?
Does anyone use InstaWatcher? Anyway, there will be aggregators to get that for you, but I think everyone's experience with content right now is going into your Fire Stick, clicking through 75 things, picking out 9 things to watch, and then immediately going to HBO Go, doing the same thing. So the experience is not ideal. And then, as Amit mentioned, the off workflow didn't grow up as nice as we thought it was going to be. So I believe the TV guide of the future will be your search engine. People will come at content sideways the same way they come at news and entertainment content on the interwebs today. So
Unless it's niche, right? Unless
Right.
if you're Tennis Channel, as an example, or Crunchyroll, and you're servicing anime or Drama Fever, and you're servicing Korean dramas, or your MLB or what have you, the fan will go to that destination and will find what they want to find, because they'll know it will deliver on a promise. If you're in the general entertainment business or the general sports business, right, you're having to cater to a lot of different audiences, and that makes for a very difficult experience, because you're going to let somebody down unless you own the rights to everything, right? And that's one of the problems with VOD, for instance, is again, using Time Warner's example, you'll go on Time Warner, you'll go, okay, well, here are 6 episodes of the series I just missed, but where are the other 13? Well, that got windowed because they sold it to somebody else. And so, there'd be a great search engine that would tell you where these things are, but you'll get a listing that says it's in 8 different places.
Yeah.
And you won't know which is the one you missed, et cetera. I think the Apple TV approach to it is pretty interesting, but you have to develop an app to take advantage of that, to take advantage of Siri to be able to search across apps to find what you're looking for. But it's a tough balance now to be able to find what you're looking for.
Yeah, sorry.
Go on after.
Well, I was just going to agree wholeheartedly with that. So the app experience as it exists today certainly doesn't scale. And diving into one app and then backing out into another, is not a long-term solution. We just did that Siri universal search integration with Apple TV, and I don't know if that will be the end-all solution, but certainly seems like a good starting place to where exposing metadata and exposing content across all the apps or lots of providers has potential to be a good solution. But to Adam's point, it's almost a duplication of the early days of on-demand, where you would navigate to one brand and back out, navigate to another and back out. and you're just creating a negative discovery experience unless you're very targeted, to Adam's point.
In the future, brand is what's going to win
Right.
out in the TV guide experience, and that's like an overused term, but people, to some degree, have come to understand what Netflix brand promises, right? Again, I think if you're more generic, it's tough to be able to call yourself something and not be able to support it with some sort of fulfillment. So there's plenty of cable networks out there that there's probably too many cable networks out there, right? Because it's one thing to call yourself something, but then when you get in there, you're like, okay, that's just a nice name, but that's not going to survive going forward. You have to have the content and the brand connected together.
I'd also just add, the experiences you guys were describing are the experiences on the connected device platforms, but separately in terms of actual distributors. Certainly, the set-top box environment within MVPD households is not exactly innovated over the last few years for their obvious reasons, but I think for those the trends that we're currently seeing, boxes like the X1 or X2, they seem to be going in the right direction. And then on some of the new virtual MVPDs that have launched, I think Sony View, takes this hybrid approach where it's a linear VOD, sort of look back DVR experience. They have an EPG on there, but ultimately it's driven by a lean forward or a lean back experience at the consumer's preference, plus they add on a layer of recommendations, and it seems like the world is certainly going in that direction, albeit theirs might be a little too complex, but I think from a UX UI perspective, it does seem to be where the world's going.
So the different windows have been ingrained in the system for a while. How long before they start to break down, given the value redistribution is already happening?
So that's a particular problem of converting a revenue stream, because the MVPDs kind of want you in their UI on their cable box in particular, because you're kind of stuck there, and that's an opportunity to continue to sell you on stuff. So that's not going to change right away. But to Amit's point about the Xfinity boxes, that's next gen set-top boxes will be all IP enabled, at which point you'll be able to do those real-time updates. You'll have an active internet connection. You won't be relying on coax to go back and forth. You can even go right down to real-time watermarking, real-time metrics, real-time ad decisioning and ad insertion on those platforms as well. So that kind of normalizes that experience to be commensurate with the rest of where digital is at already. So now, if you think about it from a monetization standpoint, that's an easier sell to go out to market with. You just throw a lasso around your total endpoint pool there, and you can package it all up, and you can expect the same sales experience on it. So it makes it easier. But again, my point of view is the MVPDs, we need to quit making money from having people in their UI, in their set-top box VOD UI, and then get out of it. Probably through IP.
So we've obviously seen relatively new entrants in Netflix and Amazon. Are we going to see more of those come through? You mentioned Apple TV. We have YouTube Red. We have Facebook. Potentially Verizon and others. Who's going to be the next original programming force that's trying to build their own network? I'll let anybody answer that.
Well, I think the question is anybody not going to watch it? Because anybody who watches something will be built around that. The recent Hulu news coming out Monday or Sunday was, they're jumping into the OTT
linear
space. Yeah, live linear. Going back to the nightmare of inking, couch rights and carriage and distribution deals. If you think about it, these guys are going down to the regional network level, and there's going to be all sorts of interesting things for them to solve. Like, hey, you have your iPad, you can watch, you know, if you're in Manhattan, you can watch a Yankees game on your iPad. But if you leave your house, like for some reason, if you're on Verizon network, you no longer have the rights to watch that same game you were just watching in your house when you walk outside.
Right.
So and that nuance goes down to like every sport team, every zip code, every affiliate network.
You saw
out
Sony
there.
View run into that
Yeah,
challenge,
I
which
actually-
limited their
I
initial
lived it with
national.
them.
Yeah, me too. Well, I'm sure you did.
Yeah, that was that's fun.
But I think if you segment the distribution landscape for a second and you're focusing on OTT, so certainly the MVPDs are all, Sling was the first to launch with Dish as a virtual MVPD. DirecTV and AT&T announced their 3 OTT products, all targeting different demos, primarily in a multi-channel linear environment. We'll definitely see more MVPDs launch new services, OTT services out of footprint. And then separately on standalone services, I think between Sling and Sony View, I mean, we might see Apple get into the game, and it's going to have to be somebody with scale and some deep pockets who's willing to pay for that huge cost of entry into the business. I don't think you're going to see other new general entertainment standalone SVOD services competing with Hulu, Amazon, and Netflix. I think it's a saturated market at this point. And then finally, direct-to-consumer businesses with programmers going direct-to-consumer. Already a very, very, very crowded environment, but makes sense for certain programmers who might have capped out their growth in MVPD households or whatnot. So I think that area is crowded, and you'll see consolidation there. Interesting talks about full screen. There's certainly a lot of chatter about what they're doing on the SVOD side or on the general subscription side. So it's a crowded place.
I think it's going to get more crowded. I think ATSC 3.0 is about to make it a lot easier for people to access, to connect to a consumer at a much lower price point. I think streaming costs is what keeps a lot of people out of it. And so if as an example of what you read, that Netflix could, in essence, to reach the same consumer for 25 cents across 3.0, that's really compelling, and that opens up a lot of people that have a lot of quality content to actually get to the consumer. The bigger question is, what's the business model? And if you are ad-supported, you got a pretty big mountain to climb, because I remember doing business models 10 years ago, and you come out with some sort of assumption as to how many impressions you need or how many video plays you had to have. And you're like, okay, all I need to have is 3 million a month. And then it became, okay, that's not enough. I got to have 15 million a month because Yahoo has this and so on has this. Okay, that's not enough, so we got to be part of a vertical now because we got to partner with somebody who will now combine it all. Oh, then there's something called YouTube, and they got a gajillion impressions. And all of a sudden you go, and then the CPMs start tanking because there's too much inventory, and there's a pre-roll in front of everything, and you sort of go, yeah, I don't want to be necessarily in that business. I would like to sort of be in the direct-to-consumer business if I can, or if Hulu is launching a virtual MVPD, and I'm assuming they'll have broadcast rights that make them competitive enough with traditional MVPD, then that's a subscription model, right? They're saying, I'm going to charge you some competitive fee that will cause you to want to disconnect that part of your cable service and just buy them on for the internet connection, for the streaming. So I actually think you're going to see an explosion of content over the next 5 years. You're going to see a lot of funny money backing a lot of interesting subscription over the top services. And then you'll start to see some consolidation because the system can't support that.
Right. So some of the names we mentioned, like a Facebook or Amazon, Apple, they potentially have different profit motives, right? They're not trying to drive revenue from entertainment. They're trying to drive retail, trying to drive Facebook traffic, other things. And so it'll be interesting to see they're coming in not with the same profit motives, and will they do the same things that you would expect normal, rational people to do within your own ecosystem. So Scott on there and Scott Barton. We talked a lot about the kind of different channels coming through. Isn't it, frankly, just a rebundling between what is traditional and over-the-top digital? And won't there just come out new bundles of pricing? How will that kind of
When you say
settle
new
down?
bundles, from who?
Well,
Just help me with a little clarification there.
so if I'm sitting there paying my DirecTV bill of $167 a month, approximately,
I just told you that number.
how does that break apart in the future world?
Oh, I see. I see what you mean. So look, from a, well, first, as I listen to all the concerns about ad-supported, we're really happy to be in the subscription business. Let me just say, as I hear all these challenges, right? Sorry. Thinking about bundling in the traditional cable bundle, for a premium service, we've essentially always been a la carte, and from a strategic perspective, we're always looking for ways to work with our distributors to find more affordable ways to get our content available to people who want it on a frankly, a more affordable basis. There's certainly a segment of users out there who are probably not interested in paying over $100 on their cable bundle before they can get a premium service. And so last year we rolled out a new service with Amazon where Starz was an add-on on top of Prime, and that's been going incredibly well for us. And our new consolidated app that has both authentication for existing subscribers, but also the ability for those broadband-only homes potentially to buy directly. Right, we're seeing that there's a definite demand for that need there, and I think we'll see. So full circle to the question here, we'll see some affiliates come out with different types of packages and different types of pricing models that can open up content that in our case in the premium space on a more affordable basis. And I think we touched on some of those earlier.
And let me just add to that. Aside from I agree, we like being in the subscription business. For us, we also like being in the wholesale business as opposed to a retailer, direct to consumer. Is it a function of rebundling? For us, it's a function of enabling or using our product as a subscriber and acquisition tool to cross-sell services for the MVPDs as they roll out new services. It's about creative packaging. So to your point, do you have to buy through a number of tiers to pay $100 to get a premium, or do you come up with creative packaging with the MVPDs such that you're helping them sell, double play offers with much lower buy-through thresholds, as long as they have certain tiers of broadband, or you allow them to offer your service on a broadband-only basis via their apps or our apps. So, that's how we've viewed the business. And then on top of that, while we certainly read all day long about the chatter and what's happening in terms of the decline of MVPD households, the reality is they can still control the broadband pipes, right. And we'd rather be in business and get bundled into those broadband homes with those MVPDs and help them grow their business. And that's the way we've been looking at the industry.
Thanks, Amit. Joe, in defense of advertising, what kind of investments are you making from Fox to make TV more of an addressable model where you get down to the individual level?
So just want to let Scott know we also found a way to make it hard for you guys as well. We do have inventory share agreements across the MVPDs that are quite complicated.
Noted.
So what have we done in the addressable TV space? We're running a number of proofs of concept with people who are capable there. Adobe's got a primetime product. There's a number of manufacturers who build it into their TV sets, et cetera, that are giving us those capabilities. The Bright House acquisitions and the consolidation of the cable giants, and they all own Canoe, so they're able to do ad insertion on the set-top box inventory. That will become addressable as well. That's the only logical direction for them to go right now. So We are ready for when it happens. We're typically not first. We're definitely not last. So, you know, we're feeling it out. Sorry, it's an effusive answer, but that's where we are.
So Scott, maybe give us a little picture of what addressability you think looks like in the future for the TV model.
Well, I don't know what it's going to look like down the line 2 or 3 years from now, but you know, certainly our business is, you know, we're tailoring to providing more census-based measures. So total impressions, you can look at the advertising, you can look at the content, you can get a very good gauge of how it's performed. We do an awful lot in our advertising business to support the whole reach, resonance, and reaction, 3 R's that are kind of basic to our business. And whether you're ad supported or whether you're a pay service, we love all customers equally. You know, we're starting to hear and see clients ask questions about more cloud-based tools, measurement tools. So we're moving more of our tools to the cloud. Machine learning is a great interest. AI. And believe it or not, we're getting an awful lot of questions from the clients already about AR and VR. And how are we going to measure, how are we going to quantify that experience, and how does that experience resonate? Is it going to make advertising all that much more penetrating in terms of the effectiveness on people? And we don't know. I mean, we're working on that measurement solution now. But the fact of the matter is that as the technology gets more sophisticated, the ability to reach out to consumers and touch them with very targeted ads, digital ad insertion is a reality we deal with every day, we all do. And it's only going to get finer and finer. And even the commercial inventory, I saw, I'm not sure if it was a soft drink manufacturer, but there was somebody that announced just the other day that they're going to be making like 100 5-second spots. So interesting that even the advertisements that are being delivered to the households are no longer the 30 second or the 15 seconds, are going down to as little as 5 seconds.
Because you can't skip it, right?
Yeah, you
Because
can't.
you got to watch the
can't.
first
You
5
can't be
seconds
that
on
quick
YouTube.
with your DVR.
Well, just the YouTube experience, right?
Right.
Watch the first 5 seconds, then you can skip it. Well, yeah, I just watched the whole ad. There's a reason traditional TV, for lack of a better description, still gets the CPMs it gets and still sees the unbelievable growth it gets, basically against the same 50 to 100 channels that it has, you know, and really 5 or 6 sellers. And that's because it is the most effective way to reach somebody. And I think it has somewhat to do with the reliability of measurement, you know, and Nielsen clearly does a great job of that, versus 20 or 50 other standards for how to measure other things. And it also, you can control the inventory, whereas, you know, on the World Wide Web, it's just endless ads. And it's not the most intuitive ads in the world. You know, you sort of look at what, this is before you turn on an ad blocker, right? So, which everybody under the age of 20 is putting up an ad blocker, and everybody over the age of 20 is asking someone under the age of 20 how to turn on the ad blocker. So, but you see ads pop up that you don't even understand what the relation is to the content you're looking at, let alone what your search history is. So there's a long way to go before, I think you were very delicate about saying that, there's a long way to go before people start thinking we're living in a world of Minority Report, the movie, where this ad is just getting serviced by your eyes, and you know it talks to you by name, and so on. And if you can afford to make that distance, you'll be fine. And there'll be a lot of people that can't afford to make that distance.
And I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think sometimes we get in these
Checks in the mail, by the way.
Yeah.
But literally the checks in the mail.
Okay, great. I think sometimes we get into these meetings and we think that it's only digital and that the linear experience is gone. And the linear experience still accounts for $70 billion of annual advertising.
And look at CBS's earnings today.
And look at CBS's earnings.
Yeah. And you mentioned the intuitive ad spend. I mean, it's comfortable. People are used to throwing money at it. They're good at selling it. They're great at explaining it to people. So it's just a matter of, you know, perpetuating that revenue stream.
There does seem to be some changes in the advertising model where I know for Fox and others, you're trying a more immersive ad at the beginning of programming and then taking away the ads on the
Yes.
rest of the shows. So there seems to be a kind of starting to be a kind of renegotiating of that contract between the advertisers and us as viewers that we're going to pay for
Yep.
content with advertising, right?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, the hardest thing about that, I mean, the users get it. You get less ads. That's not hard to understand.
Right.
And then you mentioned ad blockers. You know, to us, that's an opportunity because you have somebody who's tech savvy and who knows how to do stuff. And that's the kind of people we want to advertise to. So, you know, and in the instance of an ad blocker, you know, we try to convert them. You know, in our parlance, it's called a shame wall. But, you know, it's like, hey, you know, it costs us money to do this. Why don't you just click here instead? But as far as the trying out new stuff, so the users get it. Now, the people who spend money with us need to now get it. You know, everyone's happy with the waste of throwing, you know, millions of impressions of people over and over in the mid-roll. You know, mid-roll pod 1, mid-roll pod 2, you know, just keep going. We'll throw money at this all day. But, you know, so the conversation becomes, you know, how do we increase not necessarily the CPM, but the value of the stream itself? And how do we get people talking about the value of the stream? And then how do we convert them into advocates for purchasing that engaged experience that highlights the value of the stream and not necessarily 7 or 8 impressions per stream, but an already engaged user, which you might get if you throw 7 or 8 impressions at somebody.
Yeah, and I think an advertiser is, they're coming back to the idea, whether it's from a buying point of view or particularly creative point of view, that they really don't want to buy these platforms separately, right? They want to buy a single show or a type of content and follow that piece of content across all the platforms through one buy. So whether they're doing that programmatically or more importantly, they're talking to people are actually talking to each other, the buyers and the sellers, and they're saying, look, we have, and sports does a really good job of this obviously, but the ability of incorporating an advertiser into the content itself or into the way the content rolls out, and then how that goes across every different way that piece of video is consumed. And I think local TV stations have done a really good job of that actually, because they're living it every day with local news. So they're trying to figure out a way, how do I get this local advertiser to not only buy my TV channel locally, but how do I get that piece of video across all these different places? In large part because that's the video they control. All the other content that they own or license generally is either controlled by a network or controlled by a studio. So they've actually spent a good deal of time and a good deal of energy trying to understand how they can monetize their news and match it up with a local advertiser. And you're seeing a lot of interesting experimentation there with advertiser going across all with one buyer, one seller, pushing it across.
So as you look internationally, every country has their own unique broadcast environment. Are there any countries where they're more advanced than the US, you think, in how this evolution is working?
Japan and Korea.
Can you say a little bit more?
I mean, if you spend any time in Japan or in Korea, you see more and more people watching clearly on their phones. And that's not just because a lot of people own phones, it's because the platform is better than what streaming is here. And I think finally with ATSC 3.0, you'll start to see an ecosystem that starts to look more and more like that. And because of that, you're seeing viewing going on inside the home, outside the home, with no buffering outside the home and so on. And when you actually go there, it's a little scary. You get in a taxi, you know, in Seoul, and the driver's watching TV. You know, it's right there. And they developed a pretty interesting skill set to actually get you there in one piece and not miss their favorite episode or something. So I think that's sort of going to happen here, and it would be pretty exciting because that opens up a whole lot of different ways to tell a story.
All right. I'll open up to questions from the floor. In the back.
Question about original content on Stars, for example. Are you at the point now where series like Da Vinci's Demons, do they essentially pay for themselves just by airing on Stars, and or is D2D revenue significant? And if they don't pay for themselves, what really is the life cycle for that original content?
Well, I would say that all revenue is good revenue. And certainly we would want to continue to extract as much DVD or EST or international revenue as we can. So yeah, I can't really say. It would depend on the show as to whether it was paid for based on its airing on the domestic Starz channels or not. I think that we have a lot of great professionals who work at our different branches and sister companies to monetize that show throughout, and not just in the U.S. but globally as well.
Does anybody else want to call it what Starz should be doing? No? Other questions from the floor?
Yes, you haven't really spoken about the transactional model. How do you see that one evolving? Not just obviously buying, buying DVDs, but the rental, streaming rental, purchase download to home, or rental DVDs. How do you see that evolving in the landscape here at the school?
So the question was around EST, I think, and how does that play into the
Well,
model?
around transactional in general.
Okay.
Rental and EST.
We're not in that business, so I won't speak to it.
Yeah, we're only kind of in it in that our distribution agreements basically pitch that stuff out, and we get a ton of money from them that I never get to see. So I know they exist, but not down to, I don't think down to the nth degree that you're indicating. It's usually with your content aggregators. I'm not sure it's down to the on-demand worthy content. As far as original content goes, Fox doesn't sell stuff that way.
Clearly there's a trend to not buying. I mean, I think we're sort of following. I think people in the video business have looked at the music business pretty carefully, right? And don't really want to get into the business of selling individual songs necessarily or individual episodes of something. So, and that's why you see things like, Amazon Instant Video basically leveraging the Prime, basis where, that's an amazing, and not many people can afford to do that, but if you're Amazon, you got 40 million Prime subscribers in the United States, and you say, and you get all this, there's your model, right? And then you can then adjust it, right? You can then say, you can still be a Prime member, or if you just want to be an Amazon Instant Video member, we got you in, now you've sampled it, let's charge you based on a monthly basis or annual basis. But the idea of rentals, as an example, individual episode rentals does not feel very good from a business model point of view.
And I think from the content owner standpoint itself, it's going to be contingent upon them being savvy enough to ink those distribution agreements themselves, in the instance that we don't own the content ourselves.
I would just add one thing, even though we're not in that business, is, albeit TVOD is a nice business, you could just see where the trends are going. All of the growth is steering towards subscription distribution services. Similar to your point, the music model, iTunes is transactional. You're seeing all the growth on the Spotify side of the house, which is obviously subscription. So subscription or ad-supported seems to be the right.
I mean, even Apple is pushing you, the moment you go on iTunes to buy an individual song,
Right.
the
Beats.
default is actually to push you into the music service.
Yep.
Right, they actually were like, oh, you're here, great. Don't buy this song.
Use this.
Subscribe and you get everything for $10
Right.
every month, and just, by the way, forget about it, because we'll just keep auto-renewing, and you won't mind.
So it is a fundamental shift that we could, let's say, even 6 years ago, which is that long time.
I don't even know where the DVD section is at a Best Buy anymore, right? Or, you sort of look around, you're like,
They're at the back of the store.
Yeah, I mean, oddly
next to the
enough,
dishwasher.
I know the studios still make great money off it. Like, that much I can tell you. I can't tell you exactly how much because I don't know. But, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a declining business, but not as fast as you would expect.
Yeah.
And we did some interesting studies where we do different generational views, and some of the millennials are trending back to wanting to own libraries, which is counterintuitive to what you would expect. And we agreed as a group not to use the word millennial until we were an hour through. So I think
Who's here for the VR stuff? Because there's going to be helmet people. I think it's the next generation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw a few bumping into the walls earlier today.
Other questions?
For each of the content publishers, I'd be interested to hear for each of your brands, what's driving engagement on OTT platforms for each specific brand that you guys have.
I mean, I'll go first just because I'm on this side of the panel. The ability to access content they can't get anywhere else, and then being able to deliver it on a consistent basis. So, and paying attention to it as opposed to sort of plugging into some algorithm and letting it just sort of play and so on. So we literally program our over-the-top service, and we program it independently versus how we program the TV network. Though they are complementary, and you can watch one and then watch the other and go back and forth. Where we see the biggest challenge is when we can't deliver a consistent experience. Now, tennis is a little unique because it tends to be played like 11 months out of a year. But if you're in any business that has 22 episodes, it's in the binge business, or you're in the business where you have certain movies that are coming in and out based on rights, or you're in the sports business where you have leagues and it only goes for 4 months and you got to figure out what you do the other 8 months. That's the challenge that I think we face for sure, is how do you deliver a consistent experience on a monthly basis.
So we have the same exact challenges on the Fox Sports and FSGO platforms for the same exact reasons. The only curated viewing we offer there is similar to tennis. We'll have like different views of the race cars and stuff on the channels. But as far as, how do we establish what is the right way to go through and, develop this product and develop this experience? This kind of gets back to what I said at the beginning, whereas, if you're a newspaper subscriber, you got the newspaper. Not even the newspapers knew that their only job was actually the refinement and distillation of information. However, somebody wanted to consume it. And that was a failure of that industry for, the number of companies that are around still versus what were. So in this new OTT world, it's very similar in that as it's being developed, we have to be where the people are going to use it. And for us right now, I think it's that simple. We just want to make sure that if someone grabs for a device, regardless of why they're using it, hey, maybe they're a super fan of FX, or maybe they love Scream Queens and they want to use the Fox Now app or something. They want to get into the linear feeds, et cetera.
But I also think you have to understand the power of the platform, right? So if you work at a traditional TV network, whether it's distributed through cable or satellite or over the air or through a streaming device, if you try to change a program, right? If you're going to say, usually tonight we're going to run some episode of something, but we're going to change it on the fly because something happened in the culture, that's a very difficult thing to do. If you're in the direct over-the-top business, you literally, and if you're in the news business, you're doing this anyway, right? You can literally respond to something that broke and then adjust to it, right? Now, you sort of saw some cable networks play around with it, right? When there was some breaking news around Prince, all of a sudden things showed up, and you could tell because you would see the guide, and it would say something was on, but it wasn't that, because they made a quick change to try to take advantage of something, but the rest of the system didn't flow through. Digital allows you to do that, right? So in the case of tennis, when we saw Serena get upset at the US Open, right, we were like, okay, go in the library really quick and see how many matches we have of the person who upset her, right? And let's make a channel just to those matches. Because people are doing searches, and they're going to put in the keyword about who that player was, and they're going to want to watch, and I want to be the place where they come at least show up, right? And then I can decide if I want to put it out there for free, or if I want to charge for it. I can do all that literally in a matter of, an hour. You can't do that in the traditional operation of a TV network. Even a tennis channel, we can't do that. But on a subscription OTT side, or on an OTT side in general, you can.
From Starz' perspective, ultimately we treat all our customers the same, and to your point about consistency, it's paramount for us. And so the offering is identical, whether you are a DirecTV subscriber or you happen to have bought the Starz add-on on Amazon. And as far as what content's being consumed, really no magic there for us. It's the Starz originals, and it's the big theatrical outputs from our studio partners. And we see consistent patterns regardless of how they purchase Starz. Turns out good shows get watched.
Maybe a question more to Amir and Scott Brown. At the moment, the US TV market is being a domestic market. Increasingly, Netflix are coming in. They've got a global audience and advertising across globally, and are doing global rights deals, which I assume might suck up some of the available content that you guys are buying. Do you see that affecting your business in a material way over the coming years? But other global players.
For us, it hasn't. That was loud. For us, it hasn't been an issue yet. Albeit, I could see that playing out for other programmers. I mean, we are just getting into the original series business, where Netflix certainly is investing heavily on exclusive and global basis, and our exclusive studio deals are with our owners, so we feel very comfortable with those rights, and we currently play in the domestic ecosystem, so we're not competing for global rights.
Yeah, so I think the short answer is sure, certainly, right? There's some challenges there. It ties back to our strategic focus on original series, and that generation of original, so everybody's in the original series game today. Our focus on that, and our focus on that being how we carry the brand and how we bring people into the Starz brand, is really how we're working to counteract that sort of thing as far as licensing content goes. And in the last 2 years, 3 years, we've seen a lot of success with our originals, and so we're pretty happy with our strategy.
So do you see in the future who people sell rights to will change? Because you have an ecosystem that's fairly well balanced, but most Netflix content comes from library product from elsewhere, right? And so do you see that people will start to shift where they give their rights to?
It's already happening.
Yeah.
I mean, Netflix has the Disney output deal, obviously, today. That's going to hit their service later this year. The output deal was with Starz. So that's obviously a shift in the industry. That being said, for Starz now can continuously invest in original series. So there's pros and cons.
It's a good point. So just adding some color to that. So Disney just rolled out Star Wars, so we'll be getting Star Wars. So that'll be a big theatrical for us. But your point is accurate. We've shifted that strategy away from multiple output deals and focused on originals. And I think it's probably always been that way, that folks will sell to, there's always been competition,
right,
at least in the premium space, between Starz and HBO and Showtime on studio output and studio library. And I think having more entrants in the space doesn't necessarily change it that dramatically. It's always been a bit of a bidding war.
I think the sellers, having been on that side of the business, want it to be that way. So the best sellers, the best syndicators are the ones that create markets. So as easy as it would be to make one big deal with somebody, it probably takes a little bit more work to go shop something around and create multiple bidders and take parts of your library, put it here, put it there, but you're better because you're going to have more customers ultimately. That said, you have someone like Amazon and you have someone like Netflix walking in and saying, I'd like to buy the U.S., I'd like to buy bulk, right? I'd like to buy a lot of stuff. And I'd also like to buy it for Japan, and I'd also like to buy it for France. And by the way, I'm going to be in Germany next year, and I'd like to buy it there. And here's a big check. And I think that's hard to ignore, right? And I think you're going to start seeing more and more deals like that. And so if you're reliant on buying stuff and you're in the movie business or something like that in the U.S., you're going to face these challenges unless you have a global strategy, for sure.
Question in the back.
Sure. Great panel. Thanks, everybody. There's a lot of discussion about niches and how original programming is driving branding for the channel at large. Is there a lot of new thinking in terms of how channels are being marketed? I know the NBA in particular has products now where you can purchase individual games, and they're partnered with Twitter to kind of promote like individual games where there's like a dunk that happens in the first quarter. Someone can go purchase that game and watch the rest of it. So like you're able to have it just in real time essentially. And I'm just curious if there's a social media strategy that's building alongside these all these different platform realities.
What you just mentioned is sort of that would be the gold standard for someone like us to do, right? But it goes directly to that idea, which is if something is happening now, what platforms could I use to communicate? How do I adapt to it first? Do I have the content ready to go to capitalize on it? And then how do I communicate it? And so on one hand, people go social, and they put stuff out, and it's tune-in related or something related. Really what you're trying to do is tap into an existing trend and give them a moment to activate. And the NBA example, and I think baseball doing single games or also doing shortened games, this is exactly taking advantage of the platform.
So this is outside my purview, but Fox is definitely aligned on social media strategy, which is exactly what the key word there was. They built out an entire department just for that. I think the end of last year was foundational for that. So over the next year, we'll start to see what that go-to-market strategy looks like. Unfortunately, I don't know what it is myself yet. So.
And we saw the Snapchat deal recently, right, for
Yeah.
the Olympic rights. So
Yes,
that'll be
more stuff like that, more stuff
interesting.
like on Twitter, utilizing Facebook, other the smaller upstarts in the arena as well. They're starting to have those conversations. I'm starting to field those calls, but nothing formative yet.
All right, we're running up against time. Any parting thoughts or things you want to deny or retract from your previous comment? Thank you very much. We'll be around, and alcohol looks like it's being served.
Thank you.